Good evening, everyone. Please have a seat. Oh, yeah, there I am. Oh, how curious. So I want to thank you all for being here. I was a little afraid that the weather would keep people away. So good evening. It's just really fun to have you here. I'm Brent Venables, the coach of the football. Wait a second. I'm not Brent Venables. That's the other most exciting program on campus. I'm R.C. Davis Undiano with the World Lit Today most exciting. You know, easy confusion, right? I'm definitely not Brent Venables. But before I go any further, I think we would like to hear a few words from our president, Joe Harris.
Hello, I'm OU President Joe Harris. It's my honor to welcome you to this Neustadt Prize event sponsored by World Literature Today. At the University of Oklahoma, we are extremely proud of the Neustadt Prize program. Thanks to the Neustadt family, for over 5 decades, there have been Neustadt Prizes given on our campus and celebrated the world over. This tradition has been celebrated by the Swedish Academy that awards the Nobel Prize in Literature. The New York Times once noted that the Neustadt Prize is second only to the Nobel in terms of its global importance. As we turn to the next 50 years of the Neustadt Prize program, it's only fitting that this year's laureate is a writer of Jean Luen Yang's fame and renown. MacArthur Fellow, the Library of Congress's Ambassador for Young People's Literature, author of American-Born Chinese, now a Disney series, and many graphic novels. He is one of the most celebrated writers of his time. His innovative work and his support of students and fellow writers make him one of the people shaping the future of fiction and media around the world. In so many ways, the Neustadt Prize and its celebration of literary voices from across the globe embodies our fundamental purpose at OU, to change lives. We are grateful to the Neustadt family and World Literature Today for making this important tradition possible. We also thank the many Neustadt Prize winners who have contributed to the richness of literature and culture everywhere. We appreciate all of you who have joined us for this year's festival. Thank you.
He's so good. He's just amazing. So tonight, and he basically said some of this, you're going to meet some remarkable people on the program tonight, including the NSK Neustadt Prize winner Jean Yang, members of the Neustadt family, and the Neustadt jury for 2004. There are also some special friends and supporters of WLT that I want to recognize before I go any further, because they've just meant so much to us over the years and continue to be there to help us in every way. Bill Riggin, Nancy Yock. Could you stand as I say your name? Maybe stay up for a second. Bill Ribbon, Nancy Yock, Marcelo Rioseco, Tom Thorpe, John Vogels, Roxanne Mountford, Heather Hall, Brian King, Nathan Brown. Where are you, Nathan? So, Amanda Kordoleski, Rilla Askew, I think she's over there, and Paul Austin, of course, her other half. Emily Johnson, Jonathan Stalling, Karen Hayes Thuman, Siobhan Williams. Where's Siobhan? Thank you so much. Pete Frostley, Sophie Miller, and Ping Shu, I think, who's right here. Thank you so much. Also, tonight we've got with us an extraordinary group of writers who are amazingly talented and they're just wonderful. We had a reception here last night, and they read their work, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. They're just so moving. This amazing group of dedicated friends are really dedicated friends to the Neustadt Prize program. They are busy writers and scholars, and basically they put aside their own work to be here this week to do our work and serve the Neustadt Prize program. We are so deeply indebted to them. Who are they, you might ask? They won't all be here, but I'm going to say all their names anyway, and many of them are here. Allison Adele Hedge-Koch, Dr. Fabienne Kaynor, she's the winning juror, but she had to leave early. Jennifer Kwan Dobbs, Alexandra Litton Regalado, where are you? Oh, over there. You're supposed to stand. Stand. Clavis Natura. Thank you. Idra Novi, I know she's not here. Romeo Oriogun. Alina Stefanascu. Shole Wolpe. Please, join me in thanking this wonderful jury for 2024. Now, in these recognitions, and I'm just going to be very bold saying this, I've saved the best for last, okay? You'll notice around you a lot of students at our event tonight, WLT interns, Neustadt students, students from Colorado Academy that they make the trip here every year, our scholarship students, my mentoring students, and others. I'm speaking to the students now. You are the future. We have no doubt about that. All of this is about you. I mean, it is truly for you. That's the only reason we do anything we do. And you're what we care about. Would all of the students here, students of any sort that goes to OU or not, please stand for a moment so we can recognize you. Wow. You make it all worth it. Thank you very, very much. The Neustadt Lit Fest and the giving of these prizes are the premier humanities event at OU each fall. Among the most prestigious honors in the world, the Neustadt Prizes we give are often compared with the Nobel Prize in Literature. The New York Times has called one of our prizes the American Nobel and has said that it is second importance only to the Nobel Prize itself. Probably a lot of other prize givers would not say that. The New York Times said it, so there it is. By the way, the book you found on your chair, or maybe it was beneath your chair, is for you to keep. And if you thumb through it and read some of it, you'll see why the Neustadt Prizes are often compared to the Nobel. Around the giving of these prizes, WLT creates the Neustadt Lit Fest, a tradition of honoring literary excellence and bringing the greatest writers in the world to meet with and inspire OU students. Tonight, World Lit Today joins with the Neustadt family to honor the 2023 winner of the NSK Prize, Luen Yang, and you'll get to hear him before too long. And I say this with just a little bit of heavy heart because of what's happening in the world right now. The Neustadt program recognizes literature as a source of cultural understanding, which I think is true, for the many nations of the world, and we at WLT are honored to be the stewards of this really rich tradition. Just to be clear, there's a bragging moment coming up here. Just to be clear, what we do and say tonight will be echoed around the world and will become part of modern literary history. In effect, we make literary history every time we give one of these awards. I'm bragging a little bit, it's absolutely true. I especially want to thank the students here, and I want them to take heart and be proud of where they are. The Neustadt Prize program is the kind of program that you find at a flagship university. What's a flagship university? You know, it's every state has one, and it's that state's attempt to say, okay, we put all of our eggs in this basket. We can't do higher education any better than what we're putting in this basket. We're gambling on everything. That's OU, and I'm saying this to the students. You are at your flagship university, and you should be proud of that. Another recognition of literary studies at OU happened this last year. Maybe this is the second bragging moment, but it'll be a short one. WLT brought together a coalition consisting of the Native Writers Circle of the Americas, the Norman Arts and Humanities Council, Norman Public Schools, the Pioneer Library System, and Visit Norman, to ask the city of Norman to proclaim Norman a literary city. And on March 22nd, 2023, Larry Haikila, mayor of Norman, proclaimed Norman to be a literary city. So that will be part of our branding, part of our identity going forward. There are fewer than 300 UNESCO literary cities in the world. And we've declared ourselves to be a literary city in that same vein, but outside of that program. Please join me in recognizing this important proclamation of 2023. Last year, the World Today organization and the University of Oklahoma lost a dear friend, Dolores K. Neustadt, the mother of the Neustadt sisters who are here this evening, the grandmother of Sam Barcelo, who's right over here. Her death marks the end of an era, and that for almost 50 years, she was a smiling friend and supporter of WLT and OU. Her many gifts to OU happened during a particularly critical time when OU was starting to expand and be the big, impressive university that it is now. That was happening, and Dottie's generosity, her visionary perspective, and her famous kindness, she was kind to everybody, marked a standard that others are still challenged to match, and that's really true. Dottie and her husband, Walter, who is a good friend of mine, were philanthropists who acted as a team, a magnificent team. They met and married in Kansas City, Missouri in 1950. They settled in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and prospered with the Neustadt Land Development Company. And they quickly embarked on a philanthropic journey to support the University of Oklahoma in epic ways. They weren't kidding around. The Neustadt list of gifts to the university is long and includes, and I'm sure that you all, many of you don't know all of this, how would you know, includes a university airport, a major renovation of the university library, an endowed professorship in engineering, an annual prize for service to students, 2 prestigious literary awards, a student scholarship fund, and my job as executive director of the World Today organization. Still, I have to admit, my favorite of all the gifts they gave to OU. So, however, I happen to know that Dottie considered her children and grandchildren to be her greatest achievements. I'm delighted that one of those grandchildren, as I've said earlier, is with us tonight. Sam Barcelo works for Steward Healthcare in Boston, is a history buff and a collector of rare books. Please give a warm welcome to Sam Barcelo.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's wild to hear from an outside perspective, everything that the family has done, most of which I was a child and not a part of, but I remember when the first NSK award happened in 2003, how powerful it was, how grateful the recipient, Mildred Taylor, was, and how proud my grandmother was of her daughters carrying on her legacy. And today, seeing that this award has been going on almost for half the lifespan of the original, to me this seems still new, but it's got a really strong legacy that is exciting to see and exciting to be a part of going forward. So that is my intro, I guess. Now, the literary history part, I think you said, this is going to be immortalized. I'm sure my grandmother would be thrilled to hear that. So, thank you, everyone, again, for being here tonight. I've had an amazing time getting to know everybody, getting to know Jean, Trung, the jurors for the award. It's just been a blessing and an honor to be in the same space as so many brilliant people with such powerful voices. It's been something. For those who didn't know Dolores, who I knew as Grandy, you can get a sense of her and who she was and what she stood for by the energy in this room right now. Along with my grandfather, Walter, Pop, she wasn't, as R.C. said, just a benefactor, but she really was an embodiment of the spirit of the prize. She was a woman who sought out knowledge and adventure. She, in the face of obstacles in the time, and she was, rather than conforming to the local and the norms of the times, she sought out different perspectives. She traveled, she brought them back home with her, and she shared them with her community. She didn't, stay silent. She wasn't content with necessarily the way things were. She always was trying to expand her and others' perspectives. She issued comfort and convention for hands-on service with the Red Cross, which was a passion of hers, and she retained and cultivated all of her experiences into an appreciation for different cultures and into empathy for all human beings, which is something that she taught us and which lives on very undiluted through her children and grandchildren. And I can speak to my siblings and cousins. We all were greatly influenced and touched by Dolores and Grandy. She understood the magic of the written word in a way that was contagious as a child. And I remember some of my earliest and favorite memories of childhood were arriving at her house in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and just running to the back room where I would be sleeping and finding a stack of the latest Goosebumps books from R.L. Stine. I must have read 200 of them, and I would spend the whole week reading with Grandy and talking about the fun puppets and the monsters, and just it was the highlight of my year. And later in life, when I would go visit her at her home in Dallas, she would adamantly profess that her greatest joy was enjoying the quiet of her daily routine, knowing that I was nearby on the couch, curled up with a book of my own. The coziness was contagious, and the peace that it brought us was absolute. And it was just a special time that I couldn't have asked for more. Grandy passed away earlier this year at the age of 95. She was surrounded by family and loved ones, and she left behind a rich legacy, a major part of which is the Neustadt Prize and the NSK Award. In many ways, it can be seen as a personification of her life's pursuits and the perfect tradition for her to leave behind. By endowing the award, she found a way to amplify her voice in a time when silence might have been encouraged, but she was able to find a way to use her voice, and she used it in a way to lift up others and make sure that their voices were heard. And that legacy, what better way could there be to describe the spirit of this award than elevating those voices that don't always get a chance to be heard, even today, and seeing everyone in this room just really makes that powerful. And lastly, I want to say how proud she was of her daughters, Nancy, Susan, Kathy. Nancy's my mom. And for carrying on her legacy with the NSK Prize, which has added a whole new dimension to the Neustadt Prize and has meant so much to its recipients, to the students, to the readers around the world who get exposed to such exciting new literature. And from what I've felt this weekend, what I feel in this room right now, I couldn't be more confident that her spirit and her passion will live on for generations to come. And thank you to the university, thank you to everyone who contributed. It's really special, and she would really, really love to see this. And just thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce two more members of the Neustadt family. First, Kathy Neustadt, the K in the NSK name of the award, is here. She lives in Denver. She's a freelance field producer for ABC News. She's worked on shows like World News Tonight, Good Morning America, and Nightline. She is a former chair of the Meisel Arts and Culture Center. She was recently president of the board of the Loop Steinberg Jewish Community Center in Denver. She endowed an annual Neustadt Jam Fest, which every fall in Denver features visiting artists, authors, musicians, and new films. I've been there for one of these, and it's just a wonderful atmosphere in Denver when this is going on. She's a trustee of the Rose Community Foundation in Denver. She chairs the Jewish Life Committee. In 2015, she was honored by the Meisel Center with its annual Cultural Achievement Award. I was there, and it was effectively a Person of the Year award, and I think that's the way everybody felt it there. That year, she also received the Regents Alumni Award for her service to OU. She graduated from the University of Denver in Mass Communications and has two wonderful grown children, Tess and Josh. Please give a warm welcome to my good friend, Kathy Neustadt.
Thank you all. It's great to be here tonight. Thanks, Sam. That was a lovely tribute to our mom. She was a big reader. I found her Harold Robbins books and would hide under but anyway, they were both great readers, and they passed it on to us. So I'm happy to be here this evening to welcome you to the 2023 Neustadt Lit Fest. This is the ceremony where we will award Luen Yang the NSK Neustadt Prize for Children and Young Adult Literature, and I could not be more excited. The NSK, as you've heard, is named for me and my sisters, Nancy, Susan. I'm the K. My sister Susan's not here, so Sam is taking the S for the night. On behalf of all of us, we're so glad you're here with us as we recognize and share with you another phenomenal laureate. Since 1970, the Neustadt Prize program has gradually become one of the premier literary awards, not just in the US, but globally. Often, literary capitals will be waiting for the breaking news on who has won these awards. We savor that recognition and the impact that the prize has had in the world of arts and literature. We grew up attending these celebrations with my parents, and year after year, we felt so honored to be in the company of some of the most respected writers and scholars from around the world, many of whom I'm still in touch with. We would watch our dad give the Neustadt Silver Feather, a certificate, and the check to the winner of the Neustadt Prize, and we would always be filled with great pride, and now we get to do those honors ourselves. My mom and dad are not here in body anymore, but I know in spirit they are very proud that their kids and now their grandchildren are continuing this time-honored tradition. I want to thank RC, Daniel, the entire WLT staff for doing all the hard work it takes to bring this festival to fruition. Words cannot adequately express our appreciation. I want to thank all of you for being here in person and on Zoom. And now I'd like to introduce my sister, Nancy Barcelow.
Nancy, let me just, come on up. I just want to say a few words about you. So she is the N in the NSK, as Kathy said, and she lives in Watertown, Massachusetts with her husband, Scott. She's got two grown children, Sam and Emmy. She was recently the director of the Hospice Volunteer Program for the VNA Care Network and Hospice, and worked for 24 years as a volunteer and director of volunteer programs. Since retiring, she has continued to provide hospice education at venues in the Boston area. In 2015, she received the Regents Alumni Award for her service to OU, the same award that Kathy received. She's a lover of books and received a BA from Skidmore and a master's degree from Lesley College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She is an active advisor to the NSK program, which I appreciate very much. Please give a warm welcome to my good friend, Nancy.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see me because I'm very short. I just want to reiterate what Sam and Kathy said. It is an overwhelming honor to be in a room tonight with such incredible talent from Jean, from Trun, the jurors, the Neustadt students, and the creativity and brilliance of world literature today, and it is a true honor. I'm going to talk a little bit about the partnership of my family with the university and with this prize. So as you know, I'm the N in the NSK. So the partnership began with my grandmother and my mom and dad, and it continues through the present day. I particularly remember so well the way in which OU was an integral part of my father's life. The two things that were talked about at our dinner table were my parents' bridge hands, which always resulted maybe in some arguments, but also my father's experience with OU, from being on the Board of Regents and traveling with the football team to various games. And it was just in his cells, OU. And I would say that the pinnacle of his partnership with OU was built most famously on this prize at World Literature Today. A little history. World Literature Today first gave the Neustadt International Prize for Literature in 1970, and then in 2003, my sisters and I launched the NSK Neustadt Prize for Children's Literature. My family is proud of our support of these prizes, but we're even more touched by our working relationship with World Literature Today, OU, and the many writers and students who have benefited from this prize. We want to really stress how important the students are and how important you guys all were to my dad and to my mom. And honestly, you guys and the work you do were the focus of my dad's love of the Neustadt program. Sorry. He would have been so proud. The Neustadt Prize began with the vision created by World Literature Today editor Ivar Ivask, my grandmother Doris Neustadt, and my dad Walter Neustadt Jr. These three believed that World Literature Today and OU could celebrate literary excellence in some unique and powerful ways, and they worked to make this vision a reality. Ivar Ivask had established an international literary prize in 1969, and in 1970, my grandmother Doris created the endowment that became the Neustadt International Prize for Literature. My father and Ivar continued to promote the Neustadt Prize until my father's death in 2010 to be one of the most honored literary awards in the world. What the New York Times calls the prize second in importance only to the Nobel Prize in Literature. Ivar and my father also created a distinct identity for the Neustadt Prize. The prize consists of a check and a certificate, but most prominently, the prize is associated with a handcrafted silver feather, which you will see shortly. The feather looks like an eagle feather, and it is thick, heavy, and over a foot long. That prize feather also appears on the NSK medallion. This image of the feather is a powerful statement about this prize. Eagle feathers are traditionally instruments for writing, and in the world over, they are associated with communal authority, creativity, beauty, and grandeur. In other words, the silver feather captures the many associations that literature itself has, the power to express much about our lives, but also the very powerful potential to shape who we are and who we become. The eagle feather also has different meanings in each culture where it appears, and likewise, the Neustadt Prize seeks to recognize literary achievement that differs in very significant ways from country to country. The silver feather, in other words, captures many of the achievements that the Neustadt Prize recognizes and celebrates. My sisters and I are so proud of the NSK Neustadt Prize for Children's and Young Adult Literature, and we are so pleased that it has added to the richness of the Neustadt Prize program at OU. Our prize has expanded its scope since we inaugurated it in 2003. It is currently awarded in a literary environment dominated by young adult literature. We recently changed the prize name to the NSK Neustadt Prize for Children's and Young Adult Literature. Like our parents and grandparents before us, we will continue to encourage the writing and recognition of high-quality literature in every way that we can. We are proud of our family's contributions to the programs of University of Oklahoma and world literature today, and we look forward to promoting the reach and impact of this tradition that our grandmother and parents first began nurturing so long ago. We are happy to be here tonight to honor the winner of this year's NSK Neustadt Prize for Children and Young Adult Literature. We're so proud of you, Jean. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nance. It's always exciting for us to talk about and to see how the Neustadt program has grown over the last 50 years, how it's gone from one ceremony where the winner was awarded the prize, and now we have 2 prizes, courses for the students to learn about the laureates, a book, a tuition scholarship program, the Neustadt Lit Festival, which introduces OU students and others to the culture, politics and arts of the prize winner's home country. There's the arm of the Neustadt Prize. The Colorado Academy is now included. They help create a curriculum that is brought to students in public schools around Oklahoma. Anybody can watch it. Any student anywhere in the world has access to this curriculum. At the center of the outreach are still the Neustadt International Prize for Literature, the NSK Neustadt Prize for Children's Literature. So in 2002, we began discussing the possibility of starting a children's award, the NSK Neustadt Prize. We wanted to build on the tradition that our family had envisioned. It started because I would read to my daughter, who's now 26, so a long time ago, and she only wanted to read the books that had the seals on them, the prizes. I would pick out another book. She would say, no, I want the one that has the prize on it. It was during the Olympics, so she was very enamored with medals. So she thought that they had won a medal, and so she wanted to read it. She would read the Hans Christian Andersen, the Caldecott, the Newbery Medal, the Coretta Scott King Book Award. And she wanted to hear those books because she knew they must be special. We all know the significant impact that these books have on our children. That's when the idea of creating another prize, this one recognizing the important works of children and young adult literature, was sparked. With the help of RC and Daniel and the whole entire WLT staff, we were able to create a prize that recognizes and rewards the quality and the positive impact of children and young adult literature. Now, after 20 years, which is unfathomable, it's so hard to believe it's been 20 years, we have 11 laureates, including tonight's wonderful winner with Luen Yang. We're proud of what the award has accomplished and achieved, and we hope that in some small way, the NSK has helped to improve the quality of children and young adult literature and possibly improve their lives. We're so proud of the recognition that both of the prizes have received as 2 of the most important literary prizes, known for their integrity, their ability to identify sometimes neglected writers and other time major writers on the rise. Both prizes are having the kind of good impact that my family has always wanted to make. We are sincerely grateful to all the writers, the jurors, and others who have been part of the Neustadt Prize program. We're so proud for all they stand for. Thank you.
Okay, now we're very close to the moment we've all been waiting for. I'm going to ask Trung Nguyen to come up. He's the juror that was here last year and nominated Luen Yang for this prize. Where are you? Can you come up here? Oh, yeah, here we go. Please give a warm welcome to Trung Nguyen.
Okay, I'm going to set up my timer because I want to keep us moving at a healthy clip. So while I was here, I was so busy having such a wonderful time enjoying the company of other writers and everyone who was in charge of organizing the Neustadt Lit Festival that I completely got lost in it and neglected to prepare for this. And so I am unfortunately going to be speaking extemporaneously, but I will try to keep this brief and succinct, and I will do my very best to convey my feelings about Luen Yang's work and its impact on me. I am one of those kind of strange people who had the unique joy of learning the English language alongside my parents. Isn't that weird? Like, that's such a strange dynamic to have as a child, to see your parents struggle to learn something alongside you, and you get to help them. And it made me protective of my parents as a kid. I was very adamant and intentional about making sure that they understood the things that I was going through as a child. And to that end, children's literature became incredibly important to me personally, because the way in which we would discover American culture and learn the English language was to go to the public library and pick out books. I would always pick out the books with the most beautiful pictures, and we would read them together. I have such incredibly warm memories of reading books with my parents, books by the Dylans, Tommy DePaula, illustrated by Trina Hyman, so many names and faces and stories that still remain important to me to this day. And at home, our language development took a sort of unique trajectory. Now, in multilingual households, linguists will refer to this phenomenon as a hybrid language. At home, we spoke both languages at once. We never discretely spoke English or Vietnamese. We always spoke them together. And the reason for this is that it was more efficient. It was a tool to kind of help us move each other along in the conversation. It kept things going. Hybrid languages are so fascinating in that they're unique to each and every single multilingual family because we forget different words. And if you're unfamiliar with the concept, it's basically when a multilingual family will have a conversation and we forget a word in one language, and so we reach into the vocabulary of another language and we use that word, and the conversation just goes on completely seamlessly. To everyone else who heard us speaking to each other, I think there was a notion that the language that we spoke was broken. That's the term that we use, isn't it? It's broken English. Isn't that fascinating? I was never a really huge reader of comic books when I was little. I would read, the odd Archie comic here and there, and I would pick up, your Calvin and Hobbes, but I didn't really keep up with comic books as a form until I was much older. I didn't have a strong, sophisticated appreciation for them. And I think that actually reflected the popular culture. We have an understanding of comics as being related to pulp fiction, as being related to ephemera, something that we read and throw away. It's mere entertainment. But comics, as an adult, became something that I found to be incredibly helpful in so many aspects of bridging cultures. Comics are this unique medium where both the images and the text and the words exist together as a common text. That's not something that we talk about terribly frequently. And I realized, as a more sophisticated adult reader, that comics are a hybrid language. Comics are born out of that same space of wanting to make sure that we don't leave any of our loved ones behind. And so this medium has become incredibly special to me as a grown-up. And that feeling of familiarity, that spark that is evident, that same warm feeling that I get when I hear my parents mixing Vietnamese and English together, popped up immediately when I read Jean's book, American-Born Chinese, for the first time. It was something that stayed with me for all of my adulthood, that there was a medium that really reflected and embodied the values of making sure that as we continue on our journeys and as we tell and share our stories with one another, that we make sure that everyone can come along with us. We don't want to leave anyone behind. And so it's in that spirit that I am so proud to be able to advocate for Jean's work and to win out and have him be this year's NSK nominee. Thank you so, so much for your time, and I am so thrilled to be able to share this space with Jean tonight.
Now, if I could get Kathy and Nancy and Luen Yang to come up. we're going to sort of divide the labors here. So I'm going to ask Kathy to give the NSK medallion to Jean. Can I start in this for a second? Let me see if you can you, Pat, can you get anything of this where you are? It's a beautiful piece of silver, and I'm narrating it because you can't see it, obviously. There's a Neustadt feather, the styled Neustadt feather on one side, and the seed sower of the University of Oklahoma on the other. So it is a beautiful thing. And I'm going to ask Nancy to give the certificate signed by Joe Harris and RC to Mr. Yang. And I'm going to give an envelope which is symbolic of the check, because nobody gives checks anymore. We'll wire the money to him, but it's $35,000. Just stay up here and get it up, okay? Let me suggest, I don't have a glass here, but you do, a formal toast to the 11th laureate of the NSK Prize. Hear, hear.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I have so enjoyed my last 3 days here at the University of Oklahoma. I've really enjoyed meeting your students. I've enjoyed talking with your professors. I enjoyed the surreal experience of hearing really smart people discuss my comic books earlier today. It's absolutely incredible. So what I'd like to do with you all tonight is, first, there are lots of people I want to thank. Second, I want to tell you a little bit about my career as a cartoonist. And finally, I'd like to do a reading out of a graphic novel that I have coming out next year. This will be the very first time that I'll be presenting it in public. So for the people I want to thank, I'd like to start with God for both the blessings and the trials. My wife, Teresa, who is not a comic book person, but still supports me in my love of comic books. My kids who love comics, but not as much as me. And all the people who are responsible for the Neustadt Lit Festival. The Neustadt family, Nancy, Susan, who I didn't have the pleasure of meeting, Kathy, Sam, Heidi, Josh, everyone else who I may not have met, and the folks here at OU, including RC and Terry and Daniel and Kay and Parker and everyone else. It's been so fun to be a part of your community for this short amount of time. I'd like to thank Trung, not just for nominating me for the prize and for that incredibly touching introduction, but also for being one of our brightest new stars in American comic books. I remember the day that his editor sent me Magic Fish, which is his debut graphic novel, and I was like, this is this guy's first graphic novel, are you sure about this? And she was like, yes, it is. Very few people enter into the field at the level that Trung did. It's absolutely incredible. I'd like to thank my agent, Judy Hansen, for 2 decades worth of wisdom and advice. My editor, Mark Siegel at First Second Books, for creating a home for the stories of cartoonists, and all the other publishers I'd worked with, including Dark Horse Comics, DC Comics, and Marvel Comics. I'd also like to thank teachers, educators, librarians, bookshop owners, comic shop retailers. Without you, storytellers like me would not be able to have a job. And finally, and most especially, I'd like to thank readers. You all make all those hours that we spend in front of our drawing tables and in front of our laptops worth it. You make it possible for us to have this long conversation about what it means to be a human being through books. Now, I became a comic book nerd when I was in the 5th grade. Before that, I was just a run-of-the-mill nerd. Back when I was a kid, every local bookstore had what was called a spinner rack. This was a wire frame rack that would carry months worth of comics. You could spin the whole thing so you could see all the comics. And one night, my mom took me to our local bookstore and bought me the very first comic book of my collection. It was DC Comics Presents number 57, starring Superman and the Atomic Knights. I took this home and I read it, and by the time I got to the very last page, I knew that I was in love After that, I found out that there was this thing called the comic shop that specialized in comic books, a store that was full of nothing but comics. It was like my heaven. Every weekend, I begged my mom to take me, and every now and then, she would actually relent, and I would get to go. When I got my driver's license at the age of 16, the very first place that I drove on my own was not my girlfriend's house. It was actually to the local comic book shop. So back when I was in high school, New Comic Book Day was Friday. New Comic Book Day, for those of you who are not comic book nerds like me, is the day of the week that all of, like, the shipment of new comics comes to every single comic book store in America. These days, it's Wednesdays, or Tuesday if you're a DC fan. But back when I was in high school in the 80s and 90s, it was Friday. So throughout high school, I had this ritual. Every Friday, my friend Jason, my younger brother John, and I would pile into Jason's Volvo station wagon, and we would drive to the local comic book shop. And then I would come home with a giant stack of comics. It would take me hours to read them, because I didn't just read the words, I also really liked studying the pictures. And then when I was done, I would take each issue and I would stick it in a little clear plastic sleeve with a cardboard back. And I'd use a little piece of Scotch tape to tape the back, and then I would file it away in a long cardboard box that comic book nerds call a long box. I had a few of these in my closet. Now, I have to say that my room was almost always a mess. I always had clothes and school books and mixtapes. You all know what a mixtape is? You really do? Okay. Mixtapes everywhere in my room. The only place that was organized in my entire room were those long boxes. And I did all of this. I had this ritual of going to the comic book shop every Friday, and I did all this organization of my long box because I was in love. That's how you act when you're in love, right? You put in the love and the care and the attention that's required. My dad watched me do this, and he could not understand. To be honest, he was pretty disgusted. I am the son of two immigrants. My mom was born in mainland China, and my dad in Taiwan. Now, to be fair, my mom actually had artistic inclinations herself. So she was always pretty supportive of my comic book habit. But my dad was like a stereotypical immigrant father. He was very practical, and he was constantly worried about how I was going to make money as an adult. When I was a kid, my dad and I butt heads over our future, over my future all the time. So right before I went to college, he sat me down and he says, "Gene, you have to major in something practical." And by practical, he meant, of course, doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And he said, if you major in something practical, you can do whatever you want after you graduate. And I'm not going to say a thing. You can do whatever you want. You can even be a garbage man if you want. I won't say a thing. I found out later that garbage men actually make a lot of money, so maybe that was part of his plan B. But I listened to him, and I went to college. I got a degree in computer science. I do have to say that I do like computer science, so it wasn't entirely for my father. It was maybe 80% for my father. And then after graduated, I got a job as a computer programmer in a tiny software company in Emeryville, California. During that job, while I held that job, my dad stayed true to his word. He didn't say anything about the choices I made in life. But then I went on the silent retreat. It was a silent retreat that was held for 5 days in the Santa Cruz Mountains. During those 5 days, I only talked an hour every day to the priest that served as the retreat director. And when it was over, I arrived at two different decisions. Number one, I decided I was going to be a high school teacher. And number two, I decided I was going to take comic books more seriously. So I quit my programming job, and I found a job as a computer science teacher at Bishop O'Dowd High School in Oakland, California. Then during my off time, during the evenings and the weekends and the winter breaks and the summers, I would work on my comic books. My dad watched me do this, and he kept his promise. He didn't say anything. But then every few months, I'd get this little envelope in the mail from him. And this envelope would not contain a letter. Instead, it would contain newspaper clippings. It would be like want ads from Apple, or job listings from Google, or articles that would compare teacher salaries to computer programmer salaries. I'd get these every few months, and I would mostly ignore them. But I have to be honest, especially from the vantage point of me now, of me being a father of 4 myself, it is not like my dad did not have a point. When you look at teachers just don't make a lot of money, especially when you compare them to tech workers. And back in the 90s, when I was doing all this, it was almost impossible to make money at comics. Most people don't remember this, but the 90s were a very difficult time for the American comic book industry. These days, Marvel is like a really big deal. It's this big pop culture giant. But in the 90s, Marvel had declared bankruptcy. And many people in comics were thinking that the entire company was just going to go under, was going to disappear, completely blink out of existence. And if Marvel died, because it provided the vast majority of the books to the comic shops in America, the entire comic book market would collapse with it. So I'd go to these comic book conventions like San Diego Comic-Con, which is the biggest comic book convention in America. These days, to get a ticket, you have to reserve one months in advance. But back in the 90s, you could actually walk up on the day of and get a ticket at the door. That's how few people were going. I remember going to the very first my very first San Diego Comic-Con, and on Sunday, it felt like there were more exhibitors on the floor than there were attendees. You could almost see the tumbleweeds going through the aisles. I'd go to these panels and I'd listen to my favorite artists and writers and publishers, people I'd admired since I was a little kid, talk about how we were about to see the death of the American comic book. So I realized at that point I would probably never make money at comics. Like, my dad was probably right, but I still loved them. I still wanted to be involved. So I became a comic book self-publisher. So here's how that worked. I would write and draw a comic. Then I'd take it to my local Kinko's, which is now called FedEx office, for those of you who are younger. I'd run off copies, I'd staple them into books, and then I'd sell them at comic book conventions. By the end of a weekend, I'd sell maybe 16 of them. It'd be like 15 of my friends, and I could usually convince my mom to buy one. You know? It was not very lucrative, but it was a lot of fun. And even more importantly, at these comic book conventions, I met people who loved comics just as much as I did, who were doing the exact same thing as me, who were writing and drawing and self-publishing their own comics, who didn't care that the entire comic book industry was falling apart. So a new ritual grew out of this community for me. Throughout my 20s, a group of cartoonists in the San Francisco Bay Area, we would get together every week at somebody's house. We would have dinner together, then we would sit and write and draw together, and we would talk shop. We would look at each other's work and get feedback. We would trade tips about what to draw with. We would talk about what craft books to read. We would give each other movie recommendations. I never went to art school, and I consider this period of my life hanging out with those other young cartoonists as my art school. This was all through the late 20s and early 2000s for me. It was an incredibly fulfilling part of my life. I was working as a high school teacher, a job that I sincerely loved. And I was also making comics on the side as a part of this community of young cartoonists. Then in the year 2000, I began working on a project that had been on my heart for a while. So by the year 2000, I'd been doing comics for maybe 5 years. And I'd always had these Asian American protagonists, but their Asian Americanness was never a part of the story. And I knew because my own cultural heritage is such an important part of how I find my place in the world, I wanted to do something that was focused on being an Asian American. So I began working on a story called American Born Chinese. I published it the same way I published all the comics that came before. I would write and draw a chapter. I'd take it to my local Kinko's. I'd run off copies. I'd staple it by hand, and I'd sell it at conventions. And by this point, I was selling like 20 copies. So it was a big improvement. Now, while I was doing this, something very interesting was happening in the American book industry. First, in 2003, 2 graphic novels hit the New York Times bestsellers list. One was Persepolis, which is a classic graphic novel by this point. It's an autobiography of an Iranian-French cartoonist about her growing up in Iran during its transition to a fundamentalist government. The other was a graphic novel called In the Shadow of No Towers by Art Spiegelman, one of our most celebrated cartoonists. It was his account of living in New York during 9/11. This shocked a lot of people because before this time, people did not think that comic books or graphic novels, which are essentially just thick comic books, had the selling power to make it to the New York Times bestsellers list. So after this, everybody started entering into my world, entering into the world of handmade comics, looking for the next graphic novel to add to their publishing lists. One of the people they approached is my good friend Derek Kirk Kim, who in 2003 won all 3 major comic book industry awards. He won an Eisner, a Harvey, and an Ignatz. So after that, he had all these publishers looking for his next book. Derek is one of those friends that I hung out with once a week throughout my 20s, and he's just a really good friend. He connected me with one of these suitors of his, a publisher that was just getting started called First Second Books, run by Mark Siegel, the editorial director. Derek actually took copies of American Born Chinese from me and used his own money to send it to Mark, and then pestered Mark until he read it. Mark read it, he liked it enough to sign me up. American Born Chinese, the graphic novel, was published in 2006. It was colored by my friend Lark Pian, who had also met as part of that weekly crew that had met throughout my 20s. I have to tell you, the response to American Born Chinese was well beyond anything I could have imagined. Librarians and teachers and bookstore owners and comic book fans, and even judges of literary prizes all came out to support the book. I was shocked. And it also marked this turning point in my career in a bunch of different ways. But one of the ways, the way that was most important to my dad, was that before American Born Chinese, every time I put out a book, I would lose money. After American Born Chinese, I actually started making money at comics. Just a few months after it was published, American Born Chinese was nominated for the National Book Award. And after that, a couple of newspapers wanted to do stories about me and about the book and about the prize. One of them was the San Francisco Chronicle. Their reporter called me up and made an appointment. And one afternoon, when I was done with work, I met up with that reporter and we had this interview together. The other newspaper was the World Journal, which is a Chinese language newspaper for overseas Chinese. The reporter for the World Journal did not call me up to make an appointment. She just showed up in my classroom one day. Like she was my auntie, you know what I mean? Like she showed up and she asked to talk to me, and luckily that day, my students were having a lab day, so they were all at their computers working on a project. So I got to sit down and talk with this reporter. Despite the fact that that interview started a little awkwardly, I am so thankful that the World Journal chose to do a story about me. Because the next time I went home and visited my dad, he showed me that World Journal article tucked behind this little plastic sleeve, this little clear plastic sleeve. And I have never gotten a little envelope from him ever since. That was when the envelope stopped. Since then, things have happened for me that I never could have dreamed of when I was in the 5th grade. I've gotten to publish multiple books with First Second now. I've gotten to work on the graphic novel continuation of this amazing Nickelodeon show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I've even got to tell stories in both the Marvel and the DC universes. And then just this past May, American Born Chinese got turned into a television show on Disney Plus, starring 2 Oscar winners, Michelle Yeoh and Ki Kwan. Sometimes it really feels like I'm living somebody else's life. It's really strange. Now, I told you earlier that my dad has always been worried about how I would feed myself, how I would make money. And there's this old adage that says, do what you love and the money will follow. Do what you love and the money will follow. Now, that happened to me, right? That happened to me. I did what I loved. And eventually, it took a while, but eventually I stopped losing money and even started making money. But my wife and I, we have 4 kids now, ages 11 to 20. And I have thought long and hard about this adage. I've thought about what I want to teach my kids about the relationship between love and money. And I think the hard truth is that I was just really lucky. I was extremely, extremely lucky. I don't think that do what you love and the money will follow is a hard and fast rule of the universe. I wish it was, but I don't think it is. If I had gotten hit at the age of 36, a month before American Born Chinese was published, I would have done what I loved for 10 years up to that point, and the money would not have followed. So like I said, I've thought long and hard about this, and I think there is a better adage, and I think it's this. Do what you love, and the love will follow. Do what you love, and the love will follow. I think this has been true for me too. First, by making comic books, I gained a deeper appreciation of this art form that I've loved since I was a little kid. And now, when I read comics and graphic novels, because I've experienced making them, the experience of reading them is much richer. I think this is why it's important to teach our kids how to write and how to paint and how to make music, even if they don't ever want to be professional writers or artists or musicians. When you learn to practice an art form, you deepen your love for it. You deepen your appreciation for human expression. By doing what I loved, I deepened my love for comics and maybe my love for art in general. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, some of my closest friends today I met through comics. We have been friends for decades now, and our friendship began because we had this shared love of comic books. But then life throws a lot of crap at you, right? You get your heart broken, people you love get sick and die. You go through all sorts of failures and hardships. And having friends by your side through the hard parts of life, especially friends who knew you when you were young, especially friends who love the same things that you love, is a deep, deep blessing. It goes beyond comics. So by doing what I love, I found love, specifically the love of friends. So here's what I would submit to you. Pursue what you love with passion. You might even eventually get to make a living at it. That is definitely a possibility, but that's not really the point. Even before that possibility realizes itself, your pursuit is not in vain. By doing what you love, you'll gain a deeper appreciation, not just of a particular art form, but of the world of art as a whole. By doing what you love, you'll find yourself traveling alongside people who share your love, people who can become lifelong friends. And I believe that is actually a hard and fast rule of the universe. Do what you love, and the love will follow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm going to do a short reading. Okay, so I'd like to do a really short reading with you all, if we could switch it on. I'm a graphic novelist, so whenever I do readings, I have to show pictures. So Lunar New Year Love Story is my very first rom-com graphic novel. I teamed up with artist Luen Yang, who is one of our most celebrated children's book illustrators, to do this. I did the words, she did the pictures. And this is about two holidays, Lunar New Year and Valentine's Day, which often fall in the same week as each other, which sometimes even fall on the same day as each other. Our main character, Val, is a young Vietnamese American girl, and at the beginning of the book, she hates Valentine's Day. And she hates Valentine's Day because she thinks Valentine's Day is some holiday made up by corporations so they can sell us flowers and candy. You tell him, Val, high five. Hold on, babe. You're saying that you don't want to celebrate, like, at all? Nope, not at all. Carson Wilson Wong is my boyfriend, my very first. We met at work. He seemed to really, really like me. I figured, why not? We aren't celebrating either. Instead, Jason's gonna give me the money he would have spent on all that corny stuff so I can buy more shoe paint. Jason is Bernice's boyfriend, I've lost count, her latest. Yeah, sure, whatever you want, Bernice. Check out my newest creation. Cute. Babe, are you absolutely positively sure you don't want to celebrate? I'm sure. Cute, I was going for metal. They're totally metal. It's just, I've been planning for weeks and weeks. I wanted us to get dressed up and go out and do something special. How special? Super special. As special as my special babe. Fine. What? So metal, seriously. I mean, why not? Okay, so I do have to say this. This next scene is loosely based on something that actually happened to my collaborator, Luen Yang. Okay? Oh, you're gonna love this, babe. Ready? Ready. Surprise! The food court? Carson, you brought me to work? I figured it's where we first met. It could be since it's where we first met, it could be our special place. About time you two got here. We're not on the clock, boss. We're on a date. Hey, can I use a coupon on top of my employee discount? No. This can still be okay, right? How's your corn dog, babe? More Willy sauce? No, thank you. Carson, what are you doing? Babe, these past 2 months and 3 days have been the happiest of my life. I want you to have this. Have you lost your freaking mind? Babe, I'm not asking you to marry me. My mom stopped wearing this after the divorce, so she said I could give it to you. You just remind me so much of her. Your mom is a blue-eyed white lady. Babe, I was talking about your vibe and your fashion sense. I told you, Carson, when you're standing over the fryer, do not inhale, no matter how good you think it smells. So again, Lunar New Year Love Story will come out in January. Thank you all so much. It was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gene. You have a lot of friends here. Please don't be a stranger. We hope you'll come back, show us your work, talk about your work. Please, let's work that out. I want to say thank you to the staff at WLT, Dr. Daniel Simon, Michelle Johnson, Rob Volmar, Terry Stubblefield, Kay Blunk, and our new staff member, Parker Buskey. Parker, where are you? Okay, waving from over there. Ours is a hardworking office, and everyone at WLT does so much to make WLT and its many programs a success. Thank you, President Joe Harris, for your support and sponsorship of this Lit Fest. Thank you, Jim Ziegler, for teaching the Neustadt class on Luen Yang's work. Thank you, Thank you, Pat Horton, Bob Stovall, Lisa Pryor for being our tech team. We upgraded this year. We have probably the best tech team on campus. Thank you to the food servers for taking such good care of us tonight. On a personal note, I want to thank my companion, Molly Kurtz. As it turns out, I'm no moonlit stroll down the beach, if you can catch the drift there. And thank you, Molly, for putting up with the guy who's no moonlit stroll down the beach in so many ways. I want to thank the students in the Neustadt class. And if you are a student in the Neustadt class, please stick around a little bit. We want to get some pictures with Professor Ziegler and also the Neustadt family. Thank you, everyone. Travel safely going home. We'll see you next year. Good night, everyone.